Bullied girl fights back when boys cross the line. Her response shocked everyone. An inspiring story by Heartfelt Tales. The silence in room 237 was deafening as Maya Chen stood frozen, her textbook scattered across the linoleum floor, her face burning with humiliation. The laughter echoing from the back of the classroom wasn't the kind that came from shared joy. It was cruel, deliberate, and designed to break her spirit. For the third time that week, Derek Morrison and his gang had found a new way to torment the quiet girl who just wanted to disappear into her books. But what happened next would change everything, not just for Maya, but for every student who had ever felt powerless in the face of bullying. If this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories like this one. Maya had always been different. While other 15-year-olds were obsessing over social media trends and weekend parties, she found solace in the pages of classic literature and the complex equations of advanced mathematics. Her thick-rimmed glasses, carefully braided black hair, and preference for oversized sweaters made her an easy target in the social hierarchy of Westfield High School. She had learned to navigate the hallways like a ghost, slipping between classes unnoticed, eating lunch alone in the library, and avoiding eye contact with anyone who might see her vulnerability as an invitation. Derek Morrison was everything Maya was not: loud, popular, and seemingly untouchable. The star of the junior varsity football team, he commanded attention wherever he went, surrounded by a loyal pack of followers who laughed at his jokes and enabled his increasingly cruel behavior. To Derek, Maya represented everything he found threatening about intelligence and authenticity in a world where he had learned that power came through intimidation and conformity. The harassment had started small, as these things often do. Whispered comments about her appearance when she passed in the hallway. Accidentally bumping into her and sending her books flying. Posting unflattering photos of her on social media with cruel captions that made her stomach churn with anxiety. Maya's parents, both hard-working immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give their daughter opportunities they never had, noticed the change in their once vibrant child but couldn't penetrate the wall of silence she had built around her pain. Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, had tried multiple times to connect with Maya, sensing the girl's distress in the way she hunched her shoulders and kept her eyes fixed on the ground. But Maya had learned not to trust adults with her problems. Previous attempts to report Derek's behavior had been met with dismissive responses about kids being kids, and suggestions that she simply needed to toughen up and learn to fit in better. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in Mr. Patterson's history class. Maya had been presenting her research project on the women's suffrage movement, her voice barely above a whisper as she shared her carefully researched findings about the courage of women who had fought for the right to vote. She had poured her heart into this project, finding inspiration in the stories of women who had refused to be silenced despite facing ridicule and violence. As she concluded her presentation and bent to gather her materials, Derek saw his opportunity. With practiced cruelty, he reached out and yanked hard on the hem of Maya's modest skirt, causing her to stumble and nearly fall. The classroom erupted in the kind of nervous laughter that comes when students witness something they know is wrong but feel powerless to stop. But something had shifted in Maya during those weeks of research. Reading about women who had endured police brutality, imprisonment, and social ostracism in their fight for equality had planted seeds of strength she didn't know she possessed. In that moment of humiliation, instead of crumbling as she had so many times before, Maya felt a surge of righteous anger that seemed to come from generations of women who had refused to accept injustice. She spun around with a speed and grace that surprised everyone, including herself. Her leg swept out in a perfect arc, connecting solidly with Derek's chest and sending him tumbling backward into a desk with a crash that silenced the entire room. The bully who had terrorized her for months sat sprawled on the floor, his face a mask of shock and confusion, while Maya stood tall, her chest heaving with adrenaline and her eyes blazing with newfound confidence. The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Mr. Patterson, who had been grading papers at his desk, looked up in amazement. The other students stared in disbelief at the transformation of the girl they had dismissed as weak and helpless. Derek scrambled to his feet, his face red with embarrassment and rage, but for the first time, Maya didn't flinch under his glare. "That's enough," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm done being your victim." The aftermath was swift and complicated. Both students were sent to the principal's office, where Maya faced potential suspension for physical violence despite months of documented harassment that had gone unpunished. Her parents were called, arriving at school with confusion and concern etched on their faces. Derek's parents, influential members of the school board, demanded that Maya be expelled for attacking their son. But something unexpected happened. Sarah Martinez, a quiet girl who had witnessed the incident, found the courage to speak up. Then Michael Thompson, who had his own history with Derek's bullying, came forward. One by one, students who had been silent for too long began to share their stories of harassment, intimidation, and the toxic culture that had been allowed to flourish unchecked. Mrs. Rodriguez, armed with testimony from multiple witnesses and documentation of Derek's pattern of behavior, was finally able to build a case that the school administration could no longer ignore. The incident became a catalyst for broader conversations about bullying, the failures of zero-tolerance policies that punished victims along with aggressors, and the need for systemic change in how schools address harassment. Maya's parents, initially concerned about their daughter's use of violence, came to understand the impossible position she had been placed in. Her father, who had faced his own challenges as an immigrant worker, recognized the strength it had taken for his daughter to finally stand up for herself. Her mother, remembering her own experiences with discrimination, felt a fierce pride in Maya's refusal to accept mistreatment. The weeks that followed were not easy. Derek and his followers escalated their harassment for a time, angry that their victim had dared to fight back. Maya faced criticism from some who believed she should have continued to suffer in silence rather than defend herself. The school's initial response was to suspend both students equally, a decision that sparked outrage from parents and community members who recognized the injustice of punishing a victim for defending herself. But Maya was no longer alone. The courage she had shown in that classroom had inspired others to find their own voices. Students who had been silent bystanders began to speak up when they witnessed bullying. Teachers who had been overwhelmed by the magnitude of the problem started taking reports more seriously. Parents who had been unaware of the toxic environment their children were navigating began demanding accountability from school administrators. Sarah Martinez, the first student to support Maya, became an unlikely ally and eventually a close friend. Their friendship was built on mutual respect and shared experiences of feeling invisible in a system that seemed designed to reward cruelty and conformity. Together, they started a peer support group for students who had experienced bullying, creating safe spaces for sharing experiences and developing strategies for self-advocacy. The school was eventually forced to implement comprehensive anti-bullying policies with real consequences for harassers and support systems for victims. Derek Morrison, faced with the reality that his actions had serious repercussions, was required to attend counseling and community service. Some hoped he would genuinely change, others remained skeptical. But the important thing was that the culture of impunity that had protected bullies like Derek was finally being challenged. Maya's academic performance, which had suffered during the worst of her harassment, began to improve dramatically. Without the constant stress of anticipating the next humiliation, she was able to focus on her studies and rediscover her love of learning. Her confidence grew not just in defending herself, but in participating in class discussions, joining academic clubs, and even running for student government on a platform of creating safer, more inclusive school environments. The transformation was not just external. Maya had discovered reserves of strength she never knew existed. The girl who had once tried to make herself invisible now walked the halls with purpose and dignity. She still loved books and learning, still preferred deep conversations to small talk, but she no longer saw these qualities as weaknesses to be hidden. Instead, she embraced her authenticity and refused to diminish herself to make others comfortable. Her parents watched with amazement and pride as their daughter blossomed into a confident young woman who advocated not just for herself, but for others who faced similar challenges. The shy girl who had once eaten lunch alone in the library now sat with a diverse group of friends who valued intelligence, kindness, and authenticity over popularity and conformity. The story spread beyond Westfield High School, shared on social media and picked up by local news outlets as an example of a student taking a stand against bullying. Maya received messages of support from young people around the world who had faced similar struggles and found inspiration in her courage to fight back. She began speaking at other schools, sharing her story and encouraging others to find their own voices in the face of injustice. Years later, as Maya prepared to graduate as valedictorian and head to college on a full scholarship, she reflected on that pivotal moment in Mr. Patterson's classroom. The physical action she took was just 1 second of her life, but the decision to stop accepting mistreatment had changed everything. She learned that sometimes, when all other options have been exhausted and the system fails to protect you, the only choice is to protect yourself. Her message to other young people facing similar struggles was nuanced and thoughtful. Violence should never be the first option, she would say, but neither should suffering in silence. The real power came not from the kick itself, but from the decision to value her own dignity and worth enough to defend them. It came from finding her voice, building alliances with others who shared her values, and working to create systemic change that would protect future students from the harassment she had endured. Maya's story became a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite that fear. Her moment of physical self-defense was just the beginning of a longer journey toward emotional and psychological healing, building meaningful relationships, and using her experience to help others facing similar challenges. The girl who had once tried to disappear had instead become a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of cruelty. She proved that even in the darkest moments, we have the capacity to change our circumstances, find our strength, and refuse to let others define our worth. And sometimes, just sometimes, one moment of courage can change not just your own life, but inspire others to find their own strength and stand up for what's right. Maya's kick may have sent Derek into that desk, but more importantly, it sent a message that echoed through the halls of Westfield High and beyond. We all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and it's never too late to demand better for ourselves and others. Thank you for watching this story from Heartfelt Tales. Maya's journey reminds us that our greatest strength often emerges from our most challenging moments, and that standing up for ourselves can inspire others to find their own courage. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear Maya's message of empowerment and resilience. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know faced similar challenges? How did you find the strength to overcome them? Your stories and insights help build a community of support and understanding. Don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales and ring the notification bell so you never miss our inspiring stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember, every voice matters, every story has power, and every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Until next time, keep sharing hope and spreading kindness.